reaction. Now, you might say, wait a minute, you just showed that to me in another context. You said that was an allosteric activator. Well, I agree, this seems a lot like allosteric activation because this did not plug into the active site and it changed the folding of the enzyme to open up its active site. Well, it's not technically considered allosteric activation because the phosphate group becomes covalently bonded to the amino acid. There's a new covalent bond here. And in usual normal allosteric activators, the allosteric activators do not become covalently bonded to the enzyme that they're activating. Go backwards a bit here. Here we go. This allosteric activator might be held in place by hydrogen bonds or maybe by ionic interactions, but it's not considered to be covalently attached to the enzyme, whereas the phosphate group does become covalently attached. And yeah, that seems like kind of a trivial reason, but for whatever reason, the phosphorylation is not considered an allosteric activator. Alrighty, and phosphorylation is, of these two types of activators, you find both of them inside cells, but phosphorylation is the more common type of activation that you get of enzymes. Okay, I think that's the end of everything I was going to say on energy.
Phosphorylation, is that permanent?
It's more permanent than allosteric activators. The cell does have enzymes that can come along and rip off those phosphates. But yeah, it's more permanent than allosteric activators. In your lecture outlines, I included these figures right here just so you can get some practice of looking at molecules and deciding if it's a spontaneous or non-spontaneous chemical reaction, or whether it's oxidation or reduction of the carbons. And let's just do one just for practice. Remember, the idea here is just look at the bonds that are attached to carbons, and you can ignore any bonds that don't change. Like this carbon has 3 hydrogens on it and a bond to a carbon, and here it still has 3 hydrogens and a bond to a carbon, so nothing changed there. But the second carbon right here has 3 bonds to oxygen, but here it only has 2 bonds to oxygen, and it's gained a high energy bond to hydrogen. So you would say, okay, this is a non-spontaneous reaction. It's gaining potential energy, and the carbon is being reduced, which means it's losing bonds to oxygen and gaining bonds to hydrogen. All right, well, so our next topic is photosynthesis, and kind of a momentous occasion because I would say up to this point in the course, you've been learning fundamentals. You've been learning about the molecules involved in cells and a little bit about the chemistry of how those molecules interact in metabolic pathways and things like that. And now, and pretty much for the rest of the semester, we're going to start applying, using all those foundation concepts that you've been learning. So for instance, like when we look at photosynthesis now, you're going to see potential energy level diagrams and metabolic pathways and enzymes and concentration gradients across membranes, carbohydrates, proteins. It's all going to start to come together and get utilized now. And instead of jumping right into the chemical nitty-gritty of how photosynthesis works, I thought I would just give sort of a nice, pleasant introduction to it here, and then probably on Friday we'll start getting into the gory details of it. But just to introduce the topic, the sun is always shining on the Earth, and yeah, sometimes it's nighttime, but that's only on our side of the Earth, and the opposite side of the Earth the sun is shining. And that represents a tremendous amount of energy falling on the Earth every second of every day, and I don't know exactly how many kilojoules or kilowatts of power is falling on the Earth, but I can guarantee it's a tremendous amount. It's more than enough to meet our energy needs. If we could tap into that solar energy efficiently, we wouldn't need to burn gasoline or coal or any other fossil fuels and wreck our environment. We could get all the clean energy we want to But we haven't, we do have some solar cells to collect solar light, but certainly that's not a large part of our energy diet, so to speak. But plants have figured out how to do it very efficiently. Every time sunlight shines on a plant, it captures some of that solar energy in this process called photosynthesis to meet its energy needs. And to be a little bit more specifically, what the plant is doing with that solar energy is manufacturing glucose. The actual chemical equation looks like this. Using the energy of sunlight, the plants combine 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, which are freely available in the air. Carbon dioxide is one of the gases in the atmosphere, so that's easy to get. And 6 molecules of water, which is also pretty easy to get. Well, especially today, you just go outside, you get all the water you want to, but the plants suck it out of the ground in their roots. And combining those 2 molecules, using the energy of sunlight for the reaction, the plant is able to generate a glucose molecule, C6H12O6, and also in that chemical reaction as another product, 6 molecules of oxygen are produced, most of which just gets released into the atmosphere. Okay, now, any organism that's able to make organic molecules, nutrient molecules like glucose, out of carbon dioxide and water is called an autotroph. And the term autotroph means self-feeder, because that's what it's doing. It's feeding itself. It's making nutrients for itself. And so autotroph is any organism that can make glucose from CO2 and water. Photosynthesis is a process by which cells make, organisms can carry out the synthesis of glucose, making glucose. In the same sense that if I say I'm a traveler, you might say, okay, Mr. Eaton goes from one place to another. But if I tell you, well, I like to travel by bicycle, then I'm telling you the process that I travel. So this just means you make your own food for yourself, and this says you make your own food using sunlight. That's the process by which you're an autotroph. Okay, and there's the glucose molecule. I think I said before, you don't have to memorize the exact structure, but just know it's C6H12O6, and pretty much all the carbons have a hydroxyl group attached to them. Those are the major points about it. Okay, now, why are the cells, like the plant cells, interested in making glucose? Well, the main reason is it's cellular fuel. The plant cells, and actually pretty much all cells on planet Earth, whether you're a plant cell or an animal cell or a bacterial cell or whatever, pretty much all cells on Earth like to use glucose as their favorite energy-rich molecule. So the plant cells suck in a lot of the glucose they make just to energize themselves. Now, oftentimes the plants are so efficient at making glucose that they make more than they need for their energy needs. And so you remember what they do, they take those glucoses and link them together to store them up, and that's called a starch molecule. And we human beings are also interested in eating that starch because we want those glucose for our own cells. And so we have, over historical periods, identified plants that make a lot of starch and cultivated those plants. So potatoes and wheat and corn and all the foods we make from those are going to be very high starchy foods. Oh yeah, there's the food pyramid. At least the food pyramid when I was growing up, they said get most of your calories from starches. That should be the base of your food pyramid. It's like 6 to 11 servings a day. And I think I probably mentioned that they've updated this slightly. They've now decided that white starches like white rice and white bread are not as healthy as they thought they were. But they say the brown starches like brown bread and brown rice, whole wheat things, they say are still very healthy for us, and we should eat those quite a bit.
So the plant uses the photosynthesis to make glucose, and when the glucose it makes ATP?
Yes, yeah. When I showed you the glucose coming into the cells for energy there, what's actually happening is the cells are taking the glucose, breaking it down into carbon dioxide, and that process recharges the ATP supply inside the cell. And that process is cellular respiration, which is what we're going to talk about when we're done with photosynthesis. Okay, before I leave photosynthesis here, I'll point out that every living thing on Earth depends on photosynthesis for survival. I mean, certainly the plants are depending directly on their ability to do photosynthesis to survive. But if you say, hell, you know, I never eat plants at all, I only eat beef jerky. That'd be kind of a bizarre diet, but you say, well, okay, there's nutrients in the beef jerky, where did they come from? Well, they came from this cow, and where did the cow get its nutrients from? Well, from the grass. So ultimately, you depend on photosynthesis for your survival, even if you never eat a plant in your life. Autotrophs like plants create nutrients, and then those nutrients just move through the food chain. But if you don't have a base of a food chain creating them, there wouldn't be any food chain is what it comes down to. Let's see. Back up the slide there. There we go. Organisms like ourselves and cows and rabbits and things like that that are not able to make their own nutrients for themselves are called heterotrophs. Hetero means other, and troph means feeding. And so it basically means you can't make organic molecules like glucose from carbon dioxide and water, and so you've got to get your organic molecule nutrients by eating other organisms. Whether that means eating plants or animals is kind of up to you, or both, but you're a heterotroph if you're not an autotroph is what it comes down to. And let me finish on this slide right here. Who are the heterotrophs and who are the autotrophs? Plants are autotrophs. Some members of the Protista kingdom, which are usually the single-celled eukaryotes, are photosynthetic autotrophs. Some bacteria are, but some bacteria are not. And who are the heterotrophs? The fungi, animal kingdom, some protistans, some bacteria, and all archaea are heterotrophs. Okay, we'll call that a day, and I will see you guys in the laboratory.